Hello, and thank you for joining me on my hobby adventure. I'm Dan, and this is Forlorn Hobbies. Welcome to the first part of my getting started with a Russian army for the Napoleonic era. With Napoleonic Wargaming's recent epic blockbuster on General Nikolai Nikolaevich Raevsky and his announcement of the next installment of the Under Eagles to Glory weekender, I thought this was finally the time to take a plunge and start an army that has been on my mind for quite a while now. In this video, I'll also explore my thoughts on the differences between writing a points-based list as opposed to following an order of battle, as well as sharing a brief explanation of the inspiration for this army, as well as what minis that I will be using for it. I will also go through a list that I have chosen for the event, as well as cover briefly any future plans to round off the force going forwards. Let's start with the question, why Russians? Besides my unhealthy quest to collect as many nations as possible for the Napoleonic era, I am a huge fan of Tolstoy's War and Peace. And whilst the BBC adaptation is aesthetically pleasing and the characters' involvement with the Russian army offer a good insight to this era, such as Dólokhov's cold and ruthless enjoyment of war, Bolkonsky's stoic sense of duty and determination, even if it is in the pursuit of death, to Rostov's peacock impersonations in his hussar uniform, I know that despite it being an excellent piece of drama, it is always the historical details that are sacrificed first on the altar of entertainment. This has led me to look further into the Russian involvement in the wars of the Napoleonic era, from the battles of Austerlitz to Leipzig, and many in between. However, the French invasion of 1812, specifically Borodino, and the subsequent retreat from Moscow remain the most captivating for me. From a gaming perspective, the Russians offer a distinct flavour that focuses on their durability and combat, as opposed to the more traditional British line firing volley after volley, or the neat French columns advancing. And even though the changes to the rules are subtle, the addition of an extra point of stamina, and the tough fighter rule, as well as a minus negative to shooting, and positives to charging orders, I think this really helps to make the Russians one of the more distinct factions that truly embraces their tough and aggressive character on the tabletop. Moving on to a slightly more controversial topic, points versus orders of battle. Now, I enjoy playing games using both of these methods, and I agree with most points made by both sides of the debate. The whole point, some might argue, to historical wargaming is the what-if factor, recreating famous battles and trying to rewrite history. I am a big fan of this approach, putting yourself in the shoes of some of history's most capable generals and trying to defy the odds. I used to love watching Time Commanders as a child, but in the context of events, points allow a more balanced game and a wider field of inclusivity for players that might be interested in attending but lack the collections for a specific refight. A more in-depth discussion might be the subject for a future video, but when it comes to this one, it comes down to the size and type of game planned. This issue is also relevant to the list building itself. This is more likely to affect some nations more than others, but generally speaking, most games will take a section of a battle to focus on due to time and collection restraints. This might result in a lot of repetition in units, a lack of cavalry or artillery that you might want to include in a balanced list for a pickup game to get the full experience of the Black Powder rule set. Just taking a look at several Russian orders of battle from 1812 of the Nafziger collection, you are looking at a core level game if you want to include these three elements, that being infantry, cavalry and artillery, in your games, which isn't overly practical for the average gamer due to financial and time restraints. take Raevski's 7th Corps at Borodino. It includes 50 infantry battalions alone. However, in your gaming group, it is possible to break down this order of battle and do it individually amongst yourselves. Say, one of you takes the 12th Division that consists of 8 line and 4 Jaeger battalions, a couple of artillery pieces, and maybe 1 or 2 cavalry brigades from the supporting cavalry corps. The other players in your hobby group do the same thing. You can quite easily come together and contribute all of your smaller sections to make the overall all-bat for a refight of the Battle of Borodino, for example. However, on a one-to-one basis, this isn't really achievable. So what I like about points-based games is that it allows you to be more flexible with what you have at your disposal, especially from a hobby perspective, so you can paint a wider variety of unit types than otherwise might be the case when following an all-bat. Although the list building follows loosely the limitations for brigade composition that are displayed in the orders of battle, such as specific builds of the infantry brigades, independent grenadier brigades, and the cavalry squadrons, etc., etc. Each of these having their own limitations, such as a 0-to-1 limit per 1,000 points. This keeps it balanced and stops certain options from being spammed. I'm sure we would all love to have as many guard battalions as we could fit in the points limit against someone that has just taken poor old Opolcheny. However, that would not be fun for our opponent. This approach allows people to still follow parts of the particular order of battle, whilst being able to add an element of variety and independent flair that supports a balanced gaming experience. Now this is the approach that I will follow in the next section when I build my list. The event pack suggests armies of 600 points, so that is the size of the list that we will write initially. When starting any list, I like to build out the core first, especially when it comes to black powder, as commanders' strategy ratings can be upgraded, but this is usually an afterthought. Even more so that the Russian special rules limit the commanders, or the majority of the commanders, to strategy rating 7. The army list allows for 1 to 3 infantry brigades per 1,000 points, and each brigade can consist of 1 to 2 infantry regiments consisting of 1 to 2 battalions each. This reflects the orders of battle of the time, so I'll keep with this standard and not add any extra units to each brigade. I will then duplicate the brigade to give me a total of 8 battalions, and this gives a central core to the force. With just over half the points now spent, it's time to focus on the next part of the trifecta of black powder lists, and that is the cavalry. For this, I will opt for a light cavalry brigade to get some of that free Cossack goodness, before opting for 2 dragoon regiments, both upgraded to be large and veteran. I'll then add some variety to the type of infantry units available, and I've opted to include a small brigade of 2 grenadier battalions from a single regiment. This gives me some elite 4+ battalions to potentially shake the disorder tokens that often hinder your plans when the pack doesn't allow for interpenetration of units. This gives me a total of 10 battalions of infantry, so all that's left to add is the final element of a black powder army, and that of course is the artillery. To keep it simple, I will attach a positional battery to one of the infantry brigades. This offers a decent amount of range support, and obviously, because it's a Russian army, the bigger the gun, the better. Now, going back to the commander's strategy ratings, I've had 20 points spare, so I've opted to keep everyone at strategy rating 7, besides the cavalry commander, as the infantry, the formations you can go into such as column of attack or even march, allow you to get a further increase of bonus to your order rolls. And the infantry are quite good at holding up ground. However, I want to keep my cavalry well positioned and have a higher chance of getting that crucial charge off when it is needed, so I have opted to increase the cavalry commander to strategy rating 8. With the list chosen, I can now link it back to the original order of battle to determine what regiments I will include. To keep it structured, I will take the 2 infantry brigades from the same division, being the 12th Division, with support from other brigades that are included in the 7th Corps under Raevsky. I will take the Kiev Grenadiers from Chatilov's brigade in the 2nd Grenadier Division, as well as the 13th Cavalry Brigade under Emmanuel for the Dragoons. So the full list consists of a Commander-in-Chief with strategy rating 7, the 1st Infantry Brigade with a commander, also strategy rating 7, 2 battalions from the Smolensk Infantry Regiment, 2 battalions from the Narva Infantry Regiment, a 2nd Infantry Brigade with a commander that has strategy rating 7, 2 battalions from the Alexopol Infantry Regiment, and 2 battalions from the Ingermanland Infantry Regiment. There will be a Grenadier Brigade commanded by an officer with strategy rating 7, which includes the Kiev Grenadier Regiment with 2 battalions. A Light Cavalry Brigade with a commander with strategy rating 8. A regiment of Kiev Dragoons and a regiment of New Russia Dragoons, both upgraded to veteran status and large. Finally, there will be a Free Cossack regiment provided by the army list. A position battery will be attached to an infantry brigade as artillery support, and the total is 600 points on the dot. The event pack also includes options for a thematic vignette, and whilst there are many cool options available, such as forges or wagons and carts, I think mine has to be something relating to a priestly procession, just so I can punish myself by having to paint all that Eastern Orthodox finery. When it comes to deciding on the miniatures themselves, there is a huge range of Russians available from many manufacturers, plastic kits from Warlord Games or Perry Miniatures, as well as dozens of metal ranges from companies such as Front Rank or Eagle, depending on your tastes and needs. For me, however, I envisage this army to be fighting in the Russian winters, so I want as many greatcoats as I can get. Therefore I have chosen to go with the newish Perry's metal range, as they do a version of all my unit choices dressed to manage all that Russian snow that the French were unable to manage. I'll also head over to GMB Designs to get some great quality flags to go with them. I will, in time, do a proper review of these in the next instalment, which will focus on the minis themselves and their progress through the perils of my hobby desk. I wanted to end this video with a final shout out to Tim over at Napoleonic Wargaming for putting on the first event and for being brave enough to plan another. It was a great fun meeting new players and seeing them all come together for a weekend of great games and seeing their armies on display. It certainly helped reinvigorate my hobby motivation with a few new projects, this being one of them, and it meant a lot for Tim to see his hard work pay off. Even if he shamed my British multiple times on the tabletop with his borrowed command of them. Part 2 will be out in a couple of months as I track my progress in getting ready for the event in early March next year. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe. Until next time, enjoy your hobby.